inflation. What does that mean to you?
It means clandestine theft that people can get away with without the victim realizing it, really. The inflation is the debt. And when you stop the inflation, everything collapses. We have to go through a reckoning. That's natural law. Like, just as all debts are paid either by paying the debt or defaulting, all theft is paid too. Because when you steal, that value one loses at the expense of the other. You have a net negative effect on society. So when you have a society that operates through these sorts of theft systems, those thefts and those debts are going to be paid one way or another. Now, how do we know when this is all over? Like, bells ringing, okay, well, dollar has collapsed. It's going to be at a 15-to-1 gold to silver ratio. It's going to stay that way until we can rebuild a basic economic system again.
This is Little by Little with Andy Schectman.
Welcome back, everybody, to another special episode, this time, of Little by Little. I'm so thrilled to have in studio with me for my first in-studio recording a man that needs very little introduction for most of us who have been following this industry for a while. Rafi Farber. Rafi, it's wonderful to have you here, my man. Thank you for coming in. I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you. I want to maybe do things a little bit differently this time, but I'll save that for when we're talking. But it's good to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure, and it's a real privilege to be here today.
Awesome. Beautiful. What I mean by doing things a little bit differently, Rafi, is that I want people to get to know who you are, kind of the way that I do. But I also I don't want this to be like every other interview that you've ever done. I want this to be a little bit more conversational. So I'm going to take it down a couple different pathways and see where we end up. Put my glasses on to see the questions that I have for you. So why don't we first just start by letting you introduce yourself to my audience, those who don't know who you are. Who are you and how did you get here?
Well, I'm Rafi. I grew up in South Florida, which is where we are now. And how did I get here? Well, I grew up with a religious education, went to Jewish day school, learned Torah and, all those kinds of things. And I gradually got, more and more, I guess, libertarian leaning as I got older, as opposed to most people who go more left as they enter the academic system and get older. But my economic thought began when I was like very young, and I had what you could call maybe an inspiration that things don't make sense, and my questions were never answered. I remember it was like the late 80s, early 90s, and I noticed that prices just kept going higher. And then I was thinking, well, if this keeps going, everything's going to be $1 million, and then how is anyone going to afford anything? And those questions were never answered for me. So they just stuck in my head. I mean, my father would say things like, this is how the economy grows. Things get more expensive. But, well, then how has human civilization been alive? Has economic civilization been alive for 6,000 years? I mean, prices would be infinity now. So, I mean, those questions just kept going on in my head until I found Ron Paul. And I found him completely by accident, just searching for information on abortion, actually, because I didn't know what they did. I didn't know what the process was. And I ended up on his site because he's a gynecologist, obstetrician on profession. So then I remember just looking at his stuff and explaining money and explaining inflation. And I was like, well, this guy gets it. And then I went down the Ron Paul rabbit hole for a few weeks, just like watching everything. And then he was putting politics in perspective, putting everything in order. So I'm like, okay, well, this is what I have to be. This is what I have to do. I have to be a libertarian and learn about it. And then I just looked at his book recommendations, and I read as much as on Austrian economics as I could. That's how it started. I didn't start commenting on the gold and silver space until much later when I had confidence that I actually understood what was going on and what people were talking about. So that was only in 2020 and 2021 when I lost my job because of COVID. And by then I had enough motivation, both positive and negative. Like, I think I understand this now. And I understand that besides understanding it, I was also in like a stressful situation because everybody lost their job in COVID and everyone had to find, a solution to the lockdowns and everything else. So this is what I did. And thank God it worked out. That's basically where I come from.
Well, that's what I was getting at. I want people to understand the journey, because the journey to me is part and parcel with who you are. And I'm going to get into your journey in a minute. I think back to my past and the journey that I've taken to get here, and it blows my mind every day to think how I actually ended up here. And that's kind of what I wanted to get across here is personal experiences, personal beliefs, and how they shape your thought and your ideas. You're self-taught, like I was. That's interesting. You mentioned something that kind of resonates with me about prices continually increasing. I think of two stories. And by the way, today's episode, folks, I want to be more of a conversation. This isn't just about me asking Rafi questions. I just want to have a conversation. So forgive me for interjecting here. There's always some people who say, you got to let your guests speak more, but this is about a conversation today. So I remember my father telling me that he graduated college in 1963 and married my mother that year. They're still married today. And that they could live comfortably on $6,000 a year in 1963. And I think about your statement, how prices increase forever and ever and ever. And it makes me wonder, how high will prices be 10, 15, 20 years from now? That's kind of one of the things that jumped in my mind. The second was when I interviewed Judy Shelton. And I said, Judy, being that you were in the running for the Federal Reserve chair in 2016, who was it that came up with the idea of a 2% inflation target? Why not just have stable inflation, like no inflation? That should be what we strive for. And we had that when gold backed the currency. And she said something really interesting to me. She said, well, that was actually a decision made by Janet Yellen and her husband. And the idea was that if you had stable prices, you could never give raises, or it would cut from the bottom line of the business. But if you had a 2% inflation rate, you could give your employees a 1% annual increase in pay. They would feel like they're getting ahead, but actually they were going further behind. And she actually said that to me. This was actually policy. So, your father wasn't too far off, nor was your line of thinking. And I guess we're still in that reality right now because there is nothing backing our currency.
Well, just to, I guess, reinterpret what you're saying or look at it from a different angle, it's not that prices are rising. They only seem to rise within the inflationary system, within this illusory system that we're all stuck in, like a prisoner's dilemma, and we're all stuck in it. Prices are actually, they've been going down since 1960s. I mean, if you look at everything priced in money,
And gold.
Money, I mean gold and silver, mostly gold, silver secondarily. But if you look at actual prices, they're going down. And so the prices are only going up if you insist on maintaining your economic existence within the illusion itself. And you could say, okay, fine. So let's say I want to get out of the illusion and just, take all of my salary and just buy gold with it every month. Well, I understand you can't do that because you need to be liquid, and gold is not as liquid as dollars. It would be if we were on a gold standard, but it's not. So then you could say, so then, we are losing out. But it's not just that prices have been staying stable in gold. They've been falling in almost every category. And anything priced in gold is going down. So even if your dollar salary is less, right, then the amount of gold would keep going down with however much you could put away every month. Let's say you earn like $5,000 a month, and you put, $1,000 a month away or $500 a month away in gold and silver over 20 years, and each month it's less and less gold and silver because they keep going up. But you need less and less gold and silver to even have higher standards of living. So you can live outside of this illusion. That's what I'm trying to get people to understand. It's not about stacking and then becoming rich, and then using gold and silver to accumulate dollars. We're getting out of the illusion as much as we can. So it's like like a drug addict, right? If you're talking to a drug addict, you have to understand how they think, but you can't go completely into their world. But you care for them, so you need to communicate with them in a way that they think that you're on their planet. But you have to. It's a very difficult position where we are, because we have to put a leg in the illusion, and we have to keep a leg out of it and keep our minds together, which is it's very difficult even for people like us. It's all the more difficult for people who don't understand intuitively with the confidence that gold is actually money, and it still is today. That was the final piece that fell into place for me. That only I think in 2022 or something like that, when I finally understood, when it finally slipped into place that everything is really based on gold and silver, and this entire pyramid that we're living on. The higher we get on it, the thinner the air gets, and the more insane we become, keeping one leg in it while trying to keep one leg out. But we're keeping it together.
Especially when people say, why the hell do you have a leg over there to begin with? You're out of your mind. But you're exactly right. In fact, Rick Rule put out a very poignant post to your point just the other day. It said you'd be surprised how cheap real estate and food is if measured in gold. And that's very true. And I've recently talked about showing the price of a home in 2005, 20 years ago, and the price of gold. And using memory, the price of a home was $220,000 or whatever, and gold was just under 500. It was 4 something. And so the number was like 180 ounces of gold bought a house for you 20 years ago. Today, the house is 420,000. So the dollar is depreciated against real estate. Sure. But that 180 ounces of gold today is worth 1 180 would be worth what? My math is wrong here. Hold on. It's 400 ounces of gold, 380 ounces of gold that you would get, which is worth $1 million plus. So what, 400 into 200? Yeah, almost over 400 ounces of gold would buy you that house 20 years ago, which is worth $1.5 million today. It buys you 4 houses almost.
So I have something interesting to say about that. So I just finished a book. I think his name was Benjamin Roth, or he wrote a diary of the Great Depression. It was just this lawyer who lived in Youngstown, Ohio, and he was talking like in 1930, 1931. How the rabbi of his synagogue, I forgot what the name of the rabbi is, he talked about how much he was earning in 1930, and then he had to take a pay cut in 1931. I think it was like $5,000 a year, and he had to take a pay cut to like $4,000 or whatever it was. I forget the numbers, but I remember calculating that, so let's say he was earning X amount, whatever dollars it was. I calculated it in gold ounces. Today it would be $1 million a year. What this guy was earning in 1930, and he had to take a pay cut to like $800,000 a year. That was the Great Depression in gold terms, right? So the Great Depression was very, very difficult because people they couldn't get any dollars because it was tethered to gold, so that they couldn't get an income at all. So a lot of them had to be reduced to barter. And one of the best investments back then was treasury bonds. Right, because they were the only things that were staying. They weren't moving so much in value, but because they weren't moving nominally and everything else was moving down, the purchasing power of U.S. Treasury was skyrocketing. Right, so it's going to be the same thing this time, except we're going to go down a level in the pyramid from treasury bonds being the best investment to money itself.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You're beginning to see that happen already. I'm going to take this in a slightly different direction since we brought up rabbis. I believe at one point you considered becoming a rabbi, and at least had deep thought about it. What do you see in terms of stories, maybe in the Torah, that would align with things you're seeing right now? Is there a parallel? Is there any predictive quality in these stories? as timeless as they are, do you draw analogies from what you learned in your studies to where we are here today?
Okay, so I can answer that, but I would caution that I don't think the stories have, or at least the way I read them, have anything to do with timing. I can't say that the Torah says this and therefore by this date this is going to happen. I use more logic for that, but the stories, I can say they do give you a sense of grounding in a sense that this has happened before and this is what happens under these circumstances. And things get rough, but then, God keeps his world together and it's not going to explode in a nuclear annihilation. It's not going to end up with the mass extinction of 99% of humanity. It's going to be rough. Some people are not going to make it, but all in all, like we've been through this before, we can do it again. So the main story I come back to, which is actually very comforting, is the Tower of Babel. And in the context of where that story is in the Torah, it comes right after the flood, Noah's flood. That's the destruction of civilization. And the promise is, the divine promise after that is like, this will never happen again. We're not in a situation where the entire world is going to be destroyed. And once you're okay with that, once you understand that, you can operate with some more of a level of calm. Like you're not panicking and building a bunker and, expecting mass extinction event. If you are, you are. If you believe that, fine. I'm not trying to convince you that it won't happen. I'm saying I don't believe it. It also puts the tendency towards communism in perspective, right? We ask these questions like, well, if we've tried communism so many times, why are we going back to it? Why is Mamdani being elected? Or it looks like he's going to be elected in New York City, and he wants to make public grocery stores. This is going to collapse the city. People are going to live. Like, we know that, okay, fine. Why are they doing it again? Well, what is the Tower of Babel? It's essentially a group of people that are coming together with a single-minded purpose, and everything is controlled by an autocrat. His name was Nimrod, and he makes people build a tower. And so what does God do? He comes and he says, you can't do this. You got to split up. It's got to be, there's got to be a division of labor. You can't all focus on one thing because then everyone's going to die. They're going to have a big tower, but no one's going to have any food. And if you go into the rabbinic exegesis on this story, it gets even more poignant or more uncanny with what's going on today. Because what the rabbis say, like, why were they building a tower? What's the point? Why are they suddenly doing this? And so they said, well, think about what just happened, right? The world just ended in a flood. And so the king comes and says, you want me to stop the flood? Give me all the power and we'll build a tower and try to hold up the sky, right? It's kind of infantile, but like if people are afraid of the flood and they don't want it to happen again, they're going to build a tower to hold up the sky. They want to save the world from whatever disaster it's going to be, like from the flood, from what do they say, global warming, now it's climate change. So we're going to save the world. We're going to build this thing. We're going to forget about individual rights. The rabbis say that when somebody fell from the tower and like nobody cared if that person died, but they would care if they dropped a brick because then they have to get it and build it up again. Like that was the tragedy. But that's the same thing with the environmental movements. And environment is important, but when you're trying to use it to centralize power, that's the Tower of Babel. That's where we are. But we know that it collapses. And we just have, and in order to be safe, we've got to get off the tower, keep one leg off on the base of the tower, which is gold and silver. That's where it is. That's where you keep your mind straight into how much wealth you have, how much purchase power you actually have. And you can play a little bit in the market and say, I made this on this trade, I made that in this trade, and I'm a genius. But in the end, you want to get off the thing because we all want to stay sane. And if the sane people have the money at the end of this, then we can rebuild society that much faster and that much better.
It's crazy. I had no idea we were going to go down this path. I was watching a show on the History Channel last night, and they were talking about trying to find archaeological sites that related to the Bible from Sodom and Gomorrah to this. And they actually thought that perhaps the tower was in what is now Iraq. And they went through and they said the base was 300 by 300, which was what it said in the story, and that the base was made of baked bricks. And in the story, it talks about how they baked bricks. It was very fascinating. I find great interest in these stories and seeing if there's a way to connect them and relate them to where we are today. That's why I bring you down this path. I hope people are understanding why I go down this road with Rafi, because I think um, there is deep and symbolic information found in a lot of these stories, and that we can tie together to where we are here today in uncharted waters. And I think sometimes, yeah, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same. I think there's great lessons to be learned. I appreciate your candor in indulging me for those first couple of questions. Now I just gonna throw out some things so we can go back and forth, just some words, and tell me what pops into your mind, and how you think it is relevant to where we are right now. Let's start with inflation. What does that mean to you?
It means clandestine theft that people can get away with without the victim realizing it. Really, it's just a word we use to describe systemic theft, and even the definition of that for the Keynesians, right? It just means rising prices, which is really just the result of the theft that they are engaged in. Look, we know that communist societies collapse. That's a given. I think we can all agree on that. Eventually they do, because if everyone steals from everyone, then nobody produces anything, which is exactly what happens in hard communism. And then everything falls over. Some people starve, lots of people survive, and then they rebuild. We saw that happen with the Soviet Union. We saw it happen in China, which, they're still communist in name, but they've got free market zones, to survive. But if inflation itself is theft, which it is, then it's a theft of every transaction everywhere, but it clips a little off the top of every single transaction. So it's much slower also, because as you produce more, as your society becomes more productive, the theft becomes more and more subtle. But still, even if it does, eventually a society built on theft will collapse. We just don't know exactly when, but it's the same principle, because all societies based on theft collapse. Right? If you have a society that has theft in it, you can survive that by creating a justice system, creating a penal system to isolate the theft and put it away. But if everybody has to operate on theft because the entire monetary system where everyone's trading money is itself based on theft, then there's no way to escape it except getting out and getting gold and silver, getting real money.
Yeah, kind of like the dollar being down 11% this year,
Yeah.
which is a form of insidious, quiet theft. I would agree. Do you think that we have $28 trillion in treasuries that are coming due in 3 years? We have a $3 trillion per year budget deficit. So that's $37 trillion in 3 years, more or less, that we have to come up with. We take in $5 trillion a year in tax revenue. That's $15 trillion. That gets us halfway there. We're not going to produce our way out of this problem, at least not right now. Do you think the only path that they can take is theft, inflation, to pay that off? What other ways can we, in just a very short period of time, deal with this debt problem? And what seems to me the only pathway is through inflation. You agree or you disagree?
Inflation, I wouldn't call it the way out. It's the way to continue it. But in order for inflation to work,
Correct.
people have to not notice it. So, I mean, look, the one thing I think we have to internalize is it's not that the government's spending too much money, and if only they would spend less money, we would be in a better situation. That's not true, because the inflationary system demands more and more debt, because debt is the other side of the inflation. For every asset that the Fed buys of treasuries, right, they create $1. So the inflation comes from the debt. It's the same thing. The higher the inflation is the debt, and when you stop the inflation, everything collapses. So look, it's just a question of how high the pyramid is before it falls over.
Well, is the pyramid then being built with stable coins and the Genius Act in that case? Because the whole premise of the Genius Act is that stablecoin issuance will be backed 1-to-1 with treasuries. In my mind, they are trying to fill a void for the folks out there that are tired of holding our treasuries in this inflationary world, being stolen from. Where you look at last year as an example, as an alternative, gold was up 40% and the 10-year treasury was up 4%. You look at it this year, halfway through the year, the 10-year treasury is up 2.25%. Gold's up 35%, the dollar's down 11%. It's a losing proposition. So we are seeing entities around the world sell treasuries in favor of things like gold. Do you see this Genius Act, the stablecoin issuance, as a way to mask the inflation that you're speaking of through the issuance of stablecoins that are backed one-to-one by treasuries?
Well, I find it extremely ironic that the name of the act is the stable
Right.
coin. You know, you put the word
Yeah.
stable in it.
Yeah.
Or what was it? The
Inflation Reduction
Inflation
Act.
Reduction
Yes.
Act means the inflation acceleration.
Right.
Whatever the name is, it's the exact opposite of what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. So, look, aside from the technicals or the technicalities of how it works and how it stabilizes the pyramid, what it is essentially is another layer of this inverted pyramid that we're running. So they have the top of the pyramid wherever it is, right? I think the top is crypto. Some people might disagree with me. It's okay. You can speculate on crypto if you want. I'm not against that. But the top of the pyramid now is like, okay, we got to build another floor. So it's going to be the stabilized. It's going to be a blockchain, and you cannot stabilize a pyramid by making it bigger. Right? It doesn't work. What might end up happening is
Unless you make the base bigger.
Yeah, unless you make the base bigger. In order to make the base bigger, you have to widen the gold and silver triangle.
And uninvert the pyramid.
Yeah, that's going to kill people.
Right. No.
Yeah. What could happen with this stable coin act or the Genius Act or whatever it is? It could temporarily increase liquidity for treasury bills or whatever's going to be on the other side of the stable coin.
Yep.
But if they're going to be backed one-to-one, there's no mathematical way to use this as an inflationary force without printing the dollars backing one-to-one on these stable coins. So then you could say, okay, maybe they're going to fractional reserve the thing, right, and create more stable coins, and they create dollars, and then stable coins will be like another dollar derivative. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but however it ends up being built, it's just the pyramid getting bigger and bigger, and then on the base of it is still the same amount of gold and silver, or even less. So the end game is going to come whatever they try. There's nothing they can do to stop it.
What's funny, because the second question I was going to ask you was the word theft. Do you have any other contextual ideas or thoughts about the word theft? Because it's ironic that we go down this road the way you explained inflation. Do you see, because I think I see things very similar to the way that you do you see any other deeper meanings in the word theft where we are right now?
In the word theft itself, well, let's put it this way. A lot of people think, and I thought this too, that in order to understand money or understand what investments and all this other stuff, you have to take an economics course, go to university, get a PhD, whatever. Even on our side, you have to read Mises, you have to read Rothbard, which is a good thing to do, but you don't. The questions that I had as a kid, like how do prices go up and up and up ad infinitum? The answer is they don't. So something's wrong here. So when we're talking about theft, you can go back to the rabbinical stuff, like the Ten Commandments. All God told us to do was don't steal. That's what he said. Just don't steal, and then you'll be okay. You want to understand how the economic system works? It's very interesting. The market is a crazy, awesome machine, and it's very fascinating. You can learn a lot about human nature by learning the market, learning economics. But you can also fool yourself and get a PhD in Keynesian whatever nonsense.
Yes.
Right? It's everywhere. So as long as you just internalize, don't steal is the only thing we're supposed to do. Everything else works out once you have that principle. And then everything is going to be okay. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for some people if they can't steal, because people who make their money stealing, well, they're not going to have a living and they're going to get upset. And if they pick up a gun and try to kill us, that's going to be a problem. We're going to have to deal with that. But still, that's the only thing. And once you internalize that, again, you understand where the base is, that inflation is the base of all theft, and it has to stop. So again, you take 1 foot off the pyramid, realizing that maybe your family and your friends are still on it, and you'll offer to help them, when the thing falls, to send them a ladder up so they can get down. however it is. But this is going to be our job, and it's comforting when you realize what our place is in this game.
I agree. I often think about that a lot. You and I put ourselves out there for sure. I think about that a lot. And is there a deeper meaning? Not to put a greater importance to what I do, but I think about it a lot. I go places nowadays, Rafi, wherever I go, the people recognize me and say, "Hey, I know you. You're Andy Schectman," and it's kind of surreal. Whether I be at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, at a ski resort in Colorado, a grocery store in Minneapolis, someone I didn't even know where I grew up for 50 years knows me from these shows. And it makes you wonder sometimes, like, I don't know, not to it's even saying this stuff, I almost feel like, yeah, you're making yourself sound bigger than you are, but it putting myself out there and yourself out there the way that I have and the way that you do, you have to wonder sometimes, like, is this something you were meant to do, kind of thing? And not to add a greater importance to myself, but I sometimes wonder, because I don't need to do this. Been doing this for 36 years, and we run a very great business. I do this because I want to contribute. I want to look in the mirror and say I did all I could to help as many people as I could and run a good business. Too many people think that things have to be mutually exclusive of one another. You can't run a business and have good intentions. Everyone is so cynical nowadays, which I don't like. But no, I for one appreciate your candor and understand it and respect it, along with your knowledge base and the amount of time. I know how much time you have to put into understanding and learning. It's a lot, and so I don't know. I think these deep conversations and thoughts are something I personally get a lot out of. Um, how about silver? Something near and dear to all of us. Before you answer that question, I'll say something unusually unique is happening in silver, and that is the amount of deliveries we're seeing in COMEX. And like for the first 5 days of the August contract, we saw somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 or $7 billion worth of silver post for delivery. And much of it leaving COMEX. Now you're talking semi-trailers full. Something big is happening with silver and gold. And you can see it by the import numbers into the United States. I don't care what people say, it's tariffs, it's arbitrage. I say nonsense. Things are moving at a speed and in a direction that used to only be associated with the other countries, the Chinese, the Indians, the Russians. Now it's happening here. What goes through your mind now when you hear the word silver?
Well, a lot of people say, and I think they're correct, that we've been talking about the pyramid, right? And gold is at the bottom. But underneath the gold is an even smaller triangle of silver in terms of value. Look, before gold was money, we talk about gold standard and going back to gold standard, and this is what we have to do. But really, it's not exactly that. It's really going back to silver is what we need to do, or what will be done. I understand that trading silver coins is not economical in the sense that it's very bulky, and you can't actually exactly do that in today's world. But the human civilization started not on gold, but when we really started global trade and continents started trading in the Silk Road, and Africa started trading with Asia, and you really got a big economic system going, it was based on silver. And what happened in 1873, right, with the crime against silver, or what exactly they call it? I think it was the crime against silver. What happened was, who owned silver back then? It was the poor and the middle class. That's what they used for their money. What did rich people do? How did they store their wealth? They stored it in gold because they had too much silver. They couldn't store it all. Right? And so they had a lot of gold. So what's the best way, if the middle class and the poor, and there's a lot more middle class and poor than there are rich, what's the best way to take purchasing power from the middle class and the poor and give it to the rich? If you're on a silver standard, move to a gold standard, right? That's how you do it. But like everything that the government does in order to keep the pyramid going is basically a theft of the middle class and the poor, for the favor of the rich. So at the end of this, it's going to be a silver standard, not necessarily a gold standard. going back to gold would be better where we are now. But the real end of the inflationary system is when credit is going to collapse. When credit collapses, dollars don't work. And if dollars don't work, none of the other currencies work either, because that's what we say reserve currency, right? That's currency that's in the basement of all these other central banks. So when the dollar falls, or these other currency falls, all credit falls, all credit derivatives, and then you're left with all the purchasing power of all that lost purchasing power gets vacuumed into silver, even more than gold, which is why we're going to go eventually to very near a 15-to-1 ratio, which is the historic exchange ratio, monetary exchange ratio between gold and silver. That's natural economic law. That's not
Coming out of the ground
Yeah.
right now, it's 7-to-1. My buddy Keith Newmeyer swears by it as CEO
Yeah.
of First Majestic.
And we could actually go there. I mean, we've been there in the past briefly. Like during economic crises of the past, after major wars, it did go to 7-to-1 briefly. I don't think that's an equilibrium, but I do think it's possible to get there.
How close are we, you think, to some form? One of the pushbacks that we get from people who lack maybe the proper perspective in this industry, people who come in this industry looking to profit, which is not the way to do it. I've looked at gold and silver my whole career as wealth that has outlived everything the world has ever thrown at it. 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic. It was mentioned, gold and silver cumulatively, if anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, it's you. I think between the two of them over 700 times in the Bible. It is money. I think even, isn't the Hebrew word for money silver?
Kesef, yeah.
Yes. So, the people who listen to the things that people like you and I talk about, and it doesn't materialize through the overt central bank, commercial bank manipulation, all the goings on COMEX and the LBMA, the counterintuitive nature of it. And I've talked ad nauseum why I believe the price of silver has been held down, and that people who want to know how I feel about that can easily figure that out. But in your mind, how close are we to that? And what does the United States look like, maybe, in your mind, 5 years, 10 years? I know I asked you 2 questions there, but to me, they're kind of related. So where do you think silver goes? How close are we to it? And what does this country look like? Is there possibility of getting to the other side, or do we have to go, in your mind, through some form of a reckoning period in order to, get to the other side?
We have to go through a reckoning. That's natural law. Like, just as all debts are paid either by paying the debt or defaulting, all theft is paid too. Because when you steal that value, when you make an exchange of 2 people and they're both benefiting, legitimate, when you steal, one loses at the expense of the other. And so you have a net negative effect on society. So when you have a society that operates through these sorts of theft systems, those thefts and those debts are going to be paid one way or another. Now, I have no dollar figure for where silver is going to go in the end game, but I do believe strongly that the end game bell. How do we know when this is all over? Like the bell's ringing. Okay, well, the dollar has collapsed. It's going to be at a 15-to-1 gold to silver ratio, one that's relatively stable. I'm not saying like we hit it one day, like in 1980 it happened for a day and a half or something. I'm saying this time it's going to stay that way until we can rebuild a basic economic system again. So it could be a year or 2, 3. I don't know, but I'm saying it's going to be stable enough that silver supplies can filter through the economic system, physical silver supplies, and that figuratively almost literally creates a base of wider silver dispersal where you can rebuild another credit pyramid, hopefully an honest one where all debts are paid and you don't have fractional reserve or however you think the banking system functions. Well, what does the United States look like? I really don't know, which is why, frankly, I don't want to live here. I don't know what Israel's going to look like either. I'd rather be with my people than being here, precisely because I don't know. I would imagine that states could break off from the federal government. The federal government could dissipate. And you could have regions, different regions. Like if the South had won the Civil War, you'd have the Confederate States and the Northern United States. So might break into a few pieces. I think there's going to be serious trouble in the very big cities like in L.A., New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, where you're from. These places that are morally rotting, they're not going to do very well. But I think outside of that, you will have Americans, and America will exist. The United States, as it exists now, I don't know. I can't say yes. I can't say no. It might reorganize into some looser government or Articles of Confederation or something. Or California, New York could cede and then leave the more fiscally responsible states into some other union. It could be anything. I just hope that we get through it with the minimal amount of suffering.
Well, what you speak of sounds like the fourth turning. A lot of people talk about this, where we enter that last phase, that chaos phase, the phase of great uncertainty and, frankly, a kind of a frightening phase. And it feels that way. Is there any way in your mind of avoiding this? My theory has been lately that makes a lot of sense to me. And again, there are holes, but if we are to find any nobility in what Trump is doing, in my mind, it is that they're making it clear they don't want to be the world reserve currency. Even Vice President Vance, citing Triffin's dilemma, says it's not such a good deal for us anymore. We're putting tariffs on our allies, on Canada, on Japan, on the UK, on Australia. That's not what, in my mind, what you would do for your allies. People say it's been an unfair trade practice for a long time. Okay, maybe, but expecting the world to sell us their goods for dollars that we print, theft out of thin air, and then expect them to reinvest any excess in U.S. treasuries has given us cheap goods, Walmart and Target. It has given us high asset prices because interest rates have stayed low through the demand for the treasury. It's been an exorbitant privilege. I don't think it is a privilege any longer, as Vice President Vance notes, because in this environment, we can never provide enough dollars to the rest of the world for them to facilitate their endeavors simply through trade alone. This is the whole crux of Triffin's dilemma, and therefore, because they have to buy our currency, and we have to, in essence, they have to sell theirs to buy ours, our currency is higher, theirs is lower, our cost of manufacturing becomes far too high, so we offshore our manufacturing and hollows it out. So if they really are trying to bring home the manufacturing, my thought was you first reshore the gold. We've seen north of $100 billion worth of gold come into the country that we know of, much of it leaving. We've become net importers of gold. We hear Trump say he who has the gold makes the rules. We see Judy Shelton saying he will issue gold-backed treasuries on July 4th next year. It's a big day for him, the 250th anniversary of the country. We see Treasury Secretary Bessent saying he's a self-proclaimed gold bug and he would love to preside over some form of a new system, a new monetary system. There's clues everywhere. We hear more and more talk about gold revaluation. The Federal Reserve just wrote about it on their website. My thought was you issue a stablecoin bill to give demand to the front end of the Treasury market if they revalue gold. Like Jim Rickard says, 24,000. Mike Maloney says 10,000. In either case, you substantially devalue the dollar to revalue gold, which would benefit all of the world's central banks, would benefit the United States since we've been pulling so much in. We supposedly have all this gold that hasn't been audited. But now, if Judy is right, you peg it to the back end of the Treasury market with zero coupon bonds, redeemable in gold, which acts as the inflation hedge, acts as the interest rate. My thought is, if he really wants to reshore manufacturing, the things that would need to be done, one, you have to shed the reserve currency status in order to save the bond market, in order to bring back manufacturing at zero bound interest rates on the long end of the yield curve, redeemable in gold. You bring back manufacturing because the dollar gets massively devalued to get gold up to a high enough price to peg it to the long end of the Treasury market, which has been done before. right? Nixon did it in 71 and 70, or 72 and 73, and Roosevelt did it in 33. And we've seen other countries do it, recently. So you bring back the manufacturing, and with a devalued dollar and low interest rates, it's actually plausible. And then the goods that we sell to the rest of the world would be at a competitive rate. And you use the stablecoin bill to generate enough income for the government to keep it funded. Now, again, this is a stretch, but my point is that at this point, it's just mathematics. Do you see any viability in something like that, where if the whole idea was to bring back manufacturing so that somewhere down the road we have actually the potential to grow our way out of a problem, using gold to keep interest rates at zero on the back end of the market, using stable coins to run the front end of the market, bring back manufacturing, sell our goods cheap, and say to the world, in essence, this is a soft default on the dollar, maybe universal basic income for all of those people who are struggling because the dollar gets eviscerated in value. It's overt inflation and overt, I guess, devaluation of the dollar. Richard Russell used to say to me, Andy, that there's two choices the Fed has. This was almost 20 years ago: inflate or die, inflate or default. Could this be an option, a soft default on the dollar to support the bond market through the redemption in gold, to reshore manufacturing at the expense of being the world reserve currency? Everyone trades in local currencies with gold backing the system. Is it plausible?
It's not the worst idea I've heard, but what I would say is that, look, if we go back again to the Great Depression, what did the academics who were trying to solve this issue, what do they think was the problem? That prices aren't high enough. So if we can get the price level back to where it was in 1929 before the crash, then the crash will end. But really, the price level is just an effect of a much deeper problem down below. Why did prices fall? Because the inflation of the money supply was too high, and then it stopped, and then all these other industries that had overinvested in themselves, they collapsed.
Doesn't that sound like where we are right now, though?
Yeah, it is, and so Trump is trying to say, like, well, we've lost manufacturing, so if we can just get manufacturing back, then we'll be back where we were in the 40s and 50s when we were, a powerhouse. But that's the same. It's the same pseudo logic as saying, well, in the 1930s, well, if we could just get the price level back to where it was in the 1929 before the crash, then everything will be fine. I don't think bringing manufacturing back should be a goal in itself. I think that manufacturing returning to the United States is a symbol that it's an outgrowth of the monetary system becoming honest once again. What does inflation do? It centralizes things to the cheapest countries where workers have a lot fewer legislatively induced rights. There's child labor, and so things are going to go there where it's cheaper. That's just what's going to happen. So I'm not against your plan, but what I would say is that, and I'll add another Torah-based story to this. That if we focus on just making money honest again, then all these things will happen. Manufacturing will return, and instead of having to legislate a universal basic income, we'll have the gold and silver supplies spreading out through an honest derivative system, and then people will become richer, slowly but surely. I mean, we're not going to stop the crash. We're not going to stop people from falling, but what we can do is get out of the way, and then let the market function as it would function. So the story I can tell you, and I released this in a video recently to my Patreon subscribers, is that I came across a verse that said that the menorah, the golden menorah, this big block of gold, right? And God tells Moses how to make the menorah. So the verse says that the menorah was made. It doesn't say that Moses made the menorah. So the rabbis pick up on this statement. They're like, what do you mean the menorah was made? Didn't Moses make it? And then they say, no, actually he didn't. He didn't know how. He was trying to, and he kept failing. And so Moses says to God, like, I'm just going to put this block of gold in the fire, and you, God, you can make it into a menorah however you want, because I can't do this. It's too hard for me. So, I mean, what does that tell me? It tells me that if we just return to honest money, return to honest gold, honest silver, there's going to be consequences. People are going to fall, but it's going to be up to stackers and other people that have real assets and gold to help rebuild and find the talent, find people who can do things with our money and become the capitalists of the world. And then these problems will work themselves out. I don't think it's up to us to discover a grand system or a grand solution to all this, where and put this variable here and that variable there. And if we just like make this this trampoline or this what do you call it, that the stunt people they fall on when they're falling from the sky, like a big big pillow.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Whatever, yeah, whatever it is, it might be a good idea, but I don't have the expertise to tell you that. I just know that we have to go back to honesty.
I mean, isn't that somewhat idealistic in the respect that, yes, if we started from scratch, your idea is the only idea. That's why we didn't have inflation for 150 years, because we had everything was backed by gold. But how do we pay off what is in essence 200 trillion in debt? Most of it owed to the American people: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government, military pensions. Of all of the debt that is owed, both funded and unfunded, only about 7 trillion is owed to the rest of the world. The majority is owed to the American people. Do we not have to have that day of reckoning to default or to hyperinflate? In other words, or do you just what's the word every 7 years?
Sabbatical.
No.
Jubilee.
Jubilee. Yeah.
It's 50 years.
50. Sorry. Okay. Well, see, I'm a little rusty on my Torah lessons, but every 50 years you have the Shemitah or the Jubilee. How do we get past that? Because in my mind, when I try and figure out how this all plays out, look, you can inflate, you can default, or you can produce your way out of the problem. Well, we can't produce our way if we don't bring back manufacturing. So yes, while I agree, 60% of the country doesn't have a college education.
I see that as a good. You don't want a college education.
Yes, I agree. I understand. But in order, and you're proof positive of that, look at all you've taught yourself. And I am too, really. I mean, I'm self-taught. But the point of it is how do we get past that in order to have this system that's gold and silver backed, which is honest and sound money? But, Gresham's law would say right away that bad money is going to chase that good money right the hell out of the system until we get to a clean slate. How do we get there is a question that I think, if there was an answer, I'd certainly like to know it. What do you see? Because you see getting to that point, don't you see a stumbling block in between?
That is the inevitable point. There is we're on the way to it. Just to respond to what you said most recently first, Gresham's law, it's not exactly bad money drives out good. And Rothbard made this distinction. He's like, this is not a good definition. It's not bad and good. It's artificially overvalued money drives out artificially undervalued money, right? The dollar, the paper dollar or the digital dollar or the stable coin backed dollar, whatever form the dollar is, it's worth intrinsically nothing. The gold is the good money, and it's undervalued because if it were backed 1-to-1 with every dollar, it would be something like $40,000-$50,000, and it's only valued at $3,400. So it's artificially undervalued. Once gold is valued as at par with the dollar, whatever that is, either we get there legislatively and they say, oh, we're on a gold standard now at this exchange rate. I don't think that's going to happen. Or the market forces it like it did in 1980. And what happened in 1980, the way Daniel Oliver of Myrmikan Capital puts it, is that if you look at the Fed's balance sheet, the valuation of the gold on their balance sheet more than 100% balanced all the other assets, all the debt, all the treasuries, and all the other crap they had. The amount of gold in 1980 valued at 850 backed every other liability by 100%. That functionally is a gold standard.
I think we were net creditors in 1980, though, weren't we? Pretty damn close to it, if not.
Yeah, and the debt was a lot lower. So that's all that needs to happen. Once the gold that's on the Fed's balance sheet balances out the rest of the liabilities, all the other debt that's on it, that means that gold is at a certain valuation that balances all of the treasuries. Then you have fair value treasuries, fair value dollar. You can freeze it there.
That's what I'm saying. In other words, you revalue gold. Now, you're taking it to a whole other step. To pay off the debt, gold would have to be very, very high. Very high.
Yeah.
But in essence, that's devaluing the dollar.
Yes.
That would enable you to bring back your manufacturing. So maybe
Yes.
we're not so far off, because I don't know how else you do it. One way or the other, I think you can't be reliant on the world to produce, pretend you're the superpower of the world, and have to rely on the world to provide you all of the tools that you need for military components, for pharmaceuticals, for microchips. And during COVID, you had millions of cars sitting, in lots waiting for the microchips that we can't produce, as the leaders of thought and technology and all of the things that the United States is so good at. We are subservient to the rest of the world for these things. Can't happen. It's interesting when you go down these rabbit holes, Rafi. I could sit and talk with you forever. We just cracked a couple bottles of Manischewitz.
It's disgusting.
I know. That's the first time I ever got drunk. I think I had a very bad headache at about 13 years old. That was the
That
last
must have been
time that
horrible.
happened. But
Sorry, man.
yeah, I could do this all afternoon, and I know neither of us have the time to do that. Anything else that we should touch on before we wrap it up? Any other thoughts that you would like to share with the audience?
All right. So, I mean, to me, the priority and why I do this is I'm trying to keep a level head. Everything that I say and everything that I write, it's really for my own sanity. I'm just trying to keep, I'm trying to keep one leg off the pyramid. And if I can make a living for myself and my family while I'm keeping one leg out, I mean, that keeps me sane. So, I mean, a lot of people in today's world feel unanchored, rootless. Where are we, like in the top of a skyscraper? It's hard to maintain social connections when everyone's on their phone, and it seems like the connection of humanity with itself is dissipating in the ether, and it's getting more and more diluted. So, I mean, gold and silver is just one aspect of that, but when you essentially when you read a book or when you read about the past, you're communicating with past generations. If you feel unanchored or unable to function in the world, then talk to the past, read. And if you're writing, what you're doing is you're talking to the future. So where I get a lot of my stability from is I talk to the past.
That was really heavy. Don't mean to interrupt your thought, but that was really heavy. Continue, please.
We need to talk to the past. If the people in our current world are not here, then talk to the humans that were here before and see what they were going through. And then you'll find people who also talk to the past and want to talk to the future. That's what I'm doing. And it keeps me anchored, it keeps me sane. And even though I know there's a lot of hard times coming ahead, I'm not going to deny that. I don't know what they're going to look like. And your solution might be viable for them for that. I'm not going to be involved in the engineering. But as long as you maintain your contact with past generations and future generations, then you'll be able to keep your mind centered, and you'll be able to balance with one leg out of the pyramid and one leg on it. That's the game that we have to play now.
You would have been a very good rabbi. You have that wisdom inherent to you, the ability to maybe see things clearly that others don't. I admire that about you. I've always been attracted to that in your teachings, your lessons, your videos, your writing, your Substack. What is the best way and I want to have you on our show as far more regularly, to keep us grounded, maybe to keep one leg in and one leg out. Michelle and I plan on doing many different formats, including panels where we will have people from all different walks of life, giving us their input or their opinions on certain topics. People want to follow what you're doing, Rafi. What is the best way for them to do that so that they can keep one foot on and one foot off, maybe be a little more grounded?
Well, the easiest way is to find me on YouTube, on my channel. It's just Rafi Farber, my name. You can type it in, you'll find it. And if you want to follow how I'm following the banking system, what I'm seeing in the here and now, there's several different metrics that I follow, several different developments that I focus on, mostly in central banking and obviously the effect on gold and silver, but all centered on keeping the emotional balance necessary to get through this. through all aspects of it. Whatever's driving you insane, I think I can help keep you from. I try to keep myself from losing my mind, so hopefully I have that effect for you. But you can check my Substack out at Endgame Investor at Substack. And if you are interested more in the religious angle, you can check out my Patreon at Endgame Investor, patreon.com/Endgame Investor. And that's pretty much it.
Right on. No, it's fascinating. It is. And I think there are a lot of lessons, like you said, in talking to the past. You're proof positive of that. Rafi, I can't thank you enough for coming in, brother. We will do this again very, very soon. Unfortunately, you're heading back. Well, fortunately, but unfortunately for this, you're heading back, I think, out of the country tomorrow. So we'll have to do it on Zoom next time. But next time you're here, you'll be always welcome back into Michelle's seat. So thanks for coming in, buddy, and safe travels to you. And until we chat next time, I, for one, will be looking very forward to it. I'm sure everyone else out there will be too.
Well, thank you very much, Andy. I'm looking forward to being back.
God bless.